I thought I would start this morning by giving you a little bit of an insight into the mind of an artist. People assume that artists, I think, just sit in a room and paint. And if that was true, then it would be very easy, because creativity and ideas is never a problem for me. I can easily sit down and knock out 50 paintings without having to think about what the next one will be. I've always got, as I'm doing one, I'm thinking about another idea. That's never my problem. The problem I have is the time management, the organisation, screwing hooks onto the back, trying to work out how much I should charge for this lump of wood that I've dragged off the beach and painted yellow. They're the things that don't come easy for me. And so this week, on Tuesday, I went to measure up for an exhibition that I had to put up on Friday. And when I got there, I measured these walls, and I just sat down and I had a little idea of where everything was going to go. All the paintings were at home ready. They all had hooks on. They were all priced. We were good to go. 3 or 4 days before we were going to put them up, that was pretty good going. But then, in my little artist head, I had this little thing that the ones that I'd got for either side of the wall weren't quite what I thought would be best. So I decided on Tuesday to undertake 2 massive paintings and finish them by Friday morning and put them up, which I did do. I also put another exhibition up on Thursday, and I didn't go to bed on Thursday night. So by Friday I was quite tired, but satisfied that what I'd got up on the wall was what I wanted. But there is a point to this, by the way. I'm coming to it. So by Friday, I was satisfied with what I'd created, but very, very tired. And I got a text on Friday, sort of mid-lunchtime, to remind me that on Saturday I was going to a women's retreat at a hotel. My first thought was, I'm too tired to go. It was a birthday present that had been bought, an early birthday present. And the person thought it'd be nice for me to go and relax in this hotel and have nice food and listen to this women's conference. But I was too tired to go. And as I got up at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning to drive to Windermere, I thought, what am I doing? I could just stay in bed. I don't have to get up this morning. I'm not a particular liar in, but I do like to sit and read in bed. And I thought, what am I doing? I also thought there might be some people there that I didn't really want to talk to, which was also putting me off. Anyway, I got in the car and I faithfully drove to Windermere. And the people I thought might be there weren't. And so I managed to remain anonymous for most of the day. And I actually had a really nice day with God. And it was really moving, it was refreshing. And it just reminded me that often we just get too busy for the important things, because the paintings I had on Tuesday were good enough. It was only my own silly pride and my own silly head that decided I was going to do these bigger ones. And sometimes we just need to make time to be in God's presence. And I did take the time yesterday, and I was really glad for it. But I nearly didn't go. And I think that happens to us quite often, doesn't it? That we negate spending time with God because we're too busy. And so that's what we're going to look at a little bit today. You'll remember 3 weeks ago that I was here and we talked about Moses going down the river in the basket, little refugee going along to danger because that was safer than where he was. And we asked a question. I don't know if anybody can remember what it was. Obviously, you've been thinking about it for the last few weeks and had it on your mind because the sermon was so moving to you. So we asked ourselves the question, what were we born to do? You know, Moses was born for a purpose. What were we born to do? So today I've got a new question for you. So we're still looking at Moses because I've got a bit of a thing about Moses now, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it. So we're going to look at Exodus 3, verse 3. One day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. "This is amazing," Moses said to himself. "Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go and see it." When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses!" "Here I am," Moses replied. "Do not come any closer," the Lord warned. "Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. Moses was in Egypt for quite a long time, as we talked about, and then he fled Egypt after he got very upset with the treatment of somebody, and he fled off to Midian. So that's kind of where we left it last time. So we're looking at this story, and it just shows me again that sometimes we're too busy to take a step back. Rob Bell says that there's another world right within this one if we slow down enough to see it. And Moses, he'd been the son of an Egyptian princess. He was famous. He had everything done for him. And now, in total contrast, he was living the life of a shepherd. And you can see as you look through his life how God was preparing him for leadership. God was giving him all these different experiences and challenges. God had let him see life from both sides of the coin. And I wonder if you look at your life, when we asked that question a few weeks ago, what was I born to do? How has your life been shaped of the things that you know now? How has God been preparing you for the task that he has got for you? He had first put him with the Egyptians, and now he was with the people that he was going to free. God used an unexpected source to talk to him, a burning bush. Scientists have tried to deny the miracle of the burning bush. Some say it was a gas plant, vegetation which emits a flammable substance. Others claim the fire was caused by a volcano nearby. Others say it was merely a plant with red flowers, and there is actually a plant, isn't there, called a burning bush? But it has pink flowers, so they obviously weren't very good when they named it. God promised Moses from the burning bush that he would be with him throughout this difficult ordeal. And God is with us, isn't it? When the angel came to Jesus, another sign, another amazing sign like the burning bush, when the angel came to Jesus and said, "You're going to have a son," he said that they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is always with us. If you take hold of the truth that God is with you at every moment, how would that change your life? So that's the question, isn't it? If you could take hold of that fact that God is with you in every moment, how would it change your life? And it shaped Moses' life because he didn't run away from the bush. He went to look closer. I don't know about you, but fire and I are not friends. You probably saw that the ranch house was on fire the other night. And I don't like fire, and I tend to stray from it because I've had a few difficult experiences with fire over the years. When we first got married, I had a chip pan, which I managed to set on fire several times. The last one, I managed to short-circuit the entire hob. So Neil decided that we were no longer going to be a chip pan family, and that was over. I also have a little bit of a history with jacket potatoes. I often make too many, serve the ones we need, and then keep the others in the back of the oven, and they become these sort of molten balls of fire. So the worst time was when it got so hot that the oven door actually smashed. I had about 5 people sitting at the table waiting for dinner. But I think a couple of weeks ago there was another burning jacket potato incident. So I tend to run away from fire. Neil's laughing. But Moses didn't run away from the fire. He didn't throw water on it. He didn't think that's somebody else's problem. He walked towards this burning bush. God may surprise you if you're willing to investigate and take risks. Sometimes we have to look a little bit closer at things and just take the time to go and look a little bit closer. And that's when God started to speak to him. He took his sandals off. He said, "This is holy ground." And in verse 11, Moses says, "But who am I? Who am I to appear before Pharaoh?" The Lord told him, "I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. I am aware of their suffering. You must lead my people out of Egypt." And Moses said, "Who am I?" He didn't think that he was good enough to do that task. He tried to ask God how he could get out of it. And often we don't realise that we have a unique contribution to make. There are things that we were born to do. You know, we asked that question last time. What are you born to do? There are things that we're born to do that nobody else can do. And remember, at the time of the burning bush, Moses was 80, and his pal who was going to help him, Aaron, was 83. So if you're thinking that you're retiring from God's work, then think again, my friends. Moses wanted to know God's name because the Egyptians had many gods. And Jesus says to him, you know, "What is your name?" And he says, "Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am that I am. I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you." You know, God doesn't ask us to work alone. He always works with us. Our contributions are unique, but God always works with us. And even though Moses was going to do this amazing task, and you can see through his life, you know, why did he get born and then sent to Egypt? Then why did he go back again? You can see how God has shaped his life, getting him to know both sides of this people so that he could work together with them. He's like the ultimate United Nations leader, isn't he, at this point? But the same God that speaks to them speaks to us. Have you ever thought about that? That it's the same God that spoke to Moses at the burning bush, the same God that spoke to Esther and Joseph and Noah and all those different people, who speaks to us. So in Hebrews 13:8, Jesus says, Jesus is the same yesterday, today and forever. It's the same God. And so the question 3 weeks ago was, what were you born to do? And the new question this week is, if you know what you were born to do, what is God saying to you? What is God saying to you? And sometimes, just like Moses had to slow down and go and look at the bush before God spoke to him, we need to slow down. That was the lesson that I heard this week. I need to slow down a bit so that I can listen to God's voice. It'd be very easy for me yesterday to just waste the day away and just do other things and not be bothered. But because I made the effort, God spoke to me. And you know, even though in my sinful heart, in the end I'd only really gone because I thought, oh well, at least I'll get fed and I won't have to do anything. You know, I'm not going to say that I was over spiritual about it, but meeting with God is always a good thing. Because Jesus said, I came that you might have life. That wasn't a worn out, you know, shattered, I'll just make it by the skin of my teeth life. He wanted to come so that we could have life. And that life that he gives us is a better life than you could ever dream of. No matter what your life is like now, and how good it is, how bad it is, God has a life for you that is better than you could ever dream of. And sometimes we have to spend more time listening to him. In Matthew 11 he says, come to me all who are weary, and I will give you rest. But do you know that we represent God? Whether you want to or not, you represent God. So how you listen to him and what contribution you make is important, because you are the PR department for God's kingdom. So what can we do to be closer to God and understand what God is saying to us? Just like Moses, he got a task to do. He got a task to do because he stopped and he took the time to look at this burning bush. So the first thing we can do is be willing. And that means we have to be good listeners. I'm very good at talking, and listening is something that's more of an art. That I'm good at interrupting and chatting, and my brain goes at 1,000 miles an hour. But listening is a lost art, and we need to learn how to be listeners. So let's just look at this clip of how to listen to what's going on. We're not listening to what people are saying, and we've just got ourselves on a chess clock. Moses stopped long enough to let God love him, to let God speak to him. Serving God in your heart and not your mind. Often people don't serve from fear. Maybe I'll get it wrong. Maybe people will let me down. Maybe it won't be what I thought it might be. Maybe I won't have enough time to do it properly. And, you know, we need to remember that God is listening to us, and we need to listen to him. In verses 18 and 20, it talks about reassurance. The elders of Israel will accept your message. Then you and the elders must go to the king of Egypt and tell him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. Then at last he will let you go, and I will cause the Egyptians to look favourably on you. God gives you that reassurance when you're doing his will, when you're serving him with your whole heart. When he's asked you to do something, he'll be with you. And sometimes we need to stop long enough to understand what that is. Often when things go wrong, it's because they're in our own strength. Sometimes things go wrong because we're doing something that we think we should do rather than the thing that God wants us to do. We sometimes fill our time with things that we think are important, and I wonder sometimes how many of those things God really values. Sometimes God would probably want us to do a lot less in a lot different way. So be willing to listen. Don't be on that chess clock. I would have thrown the chess clock out the window. Go deeper. Listen to the rhythms of God's life. The 21st century pace has no time to take Jesus up on his invitation. Sometimes we just avoid the burning bush. We walk past the ranch house being on fire. We wouldn't have stopped long enough. It wasn't until Moses got close to the bush that he realised that it wasn't burning, because he couldn't see it from a distance. He had to get close to it to go and see. He had to stop a little while before God would listen to him. Someone said it's better to be slow and careful in the right direction than to be fast and careless on the wrong path. Be sure that you are on the right path before you take your steps. Busy is the enemy of abundant life, faith and relationships. Sometimes to go deeper with God, we need to take the time. I don't know if you do this, because you're obviously all perfect, but often I run around trying to solve a problem, and then I realise that if I'd have stopped and prayed about it a bit and sought some wise counsel, probably wouldn't have caused me as much stress. I'm sure you never have those kind of problems, but often we just need to be listening a little bit closer to God. So be willing, go deeper, and lastly, be swept off your feet. Love cannot be hurried. When you take the time to spend time in Jesus' presence, he can sweep you off your feet. Can you imagine what Moses felt like when he went to that Egyptian king, the Pharaoh? Can you imagine what he felt like when he put that stick in the ground and the Red Sea parted. I want to part the Red Sea. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? When we take the time to spend time with somebody, love can sweep us off our feet. Who wants to be swept off their feet by Jesus? When was the last time you felt so carried along by the presence of God that it was exciting, it was giddy, it gave you butterflies in your stomach? I want to feel like that. And you know, Jesus was very relaxed. One thing that he did was he never hurried. He had long preparation, careful planning. So the question is, what do you want more than God? What's more important in your life than serving God? And sometimes we miss out on what God has for us. And very often we're in that old state where there's 3 or 4 people doing the work of 30. And we miss out on the blessings that God has for us. In most churches, instead of being a community, it's more a small group of people just doing the same thing, getting shattered and worn out. And this is not a plea for you to do more. It's not like, you know, if you listen to God, you'd do more jobs around here and I wouldn't be more so tired. Do you not realise that Michael and Tracy are not superheroes and can't do everything? It's not about that, although it kind of is. But it's not about that. It's about what would this church be like if we were all doing the will of God? What would this church be like if we took the time to slow down and listen to what God wanted for our lives? I reckon that we would be surprised at some of the things God can do through us. Really surprised. I sat yesterday and somebody asked me what I did. And I talked to them a little bit about living life to the full in Harmforth High School and living life to the full here. And they were like, wow, that's amazing. That sounds really amazing. It often doesn't feel amazing. It often feels absolutely exhausting because I often don't have the time in between to just reflect on what God's doing and just slow down a little bit. What could you be doing if you gave God your whole heart? God is greater than any fear you have about something that you want to step into. Oh, I don't want to get involved with that because I did it once before and the people were a bit horrible and I didn't like it. Or I don't want to really get involved in church again because when you get involved in church it just becomes messy. What is it that God really wants you to do? I can't do that. I'm not sure I'd be very good at it. Bill Hybels said if you lower the ambient noise of your life and listen expectantly for those whispers of God, your ears will hear them. And when you follow their lead, your world will be rocked. Slowing down to listen. Decluttering our lives a little bit. What is it in your life that's a bit of clutter? As I said, I was getting prepared for this exhibition and the thing is the walls of the Way Hotel are massive, but my office isn't. So these big pictures, they're just so big in my office, I can hardly move. And because I can't move around my office because there's so many paintings around, everything that I try and do takes double the time because I knock the water pot over and then I have to move everything and then I can't get around the painting to get to the sink and then I smudge the paint so I have to wash it off and redo it. It's all because it's too cluttered. What is there in our lives that's cluttering up that move of God? What is it that's blocking us? You know, what is it that's blocking the move of God in your life and your willingness to serve? Because nobody's superhuman. Moses couldn't go to the Pharaohs on his own and do all that on his own. None of us can do it on our own. We need each other, and we need each other to be switched on and listening to what God wants for us. That unique contribution that only you can give. Nicholas Sparks, which is a romantic writer that I really like, says it's strange what being forced to slow down could do to a person. So my challenge for you is, what is God saying to you? What is God saying to you? We talked about 3 weeks ago, what were you born to do? So what were you born to do? What is God saying to you? And what do you want more than God? And when you answer those questions, listen to what he's got to say. Not on a chess clock, so he can't get a word in edgeways, but listen to what he's got to say. In my little tradition that I have made, which I'm not really very good at, having things that I do on a regular basis, but I seem to have now, we're going to just listen to a piece of music before we finish. The reason I do this is because I think it gives the worship group a break, and it gives them an opportunity to listen as well. So I really love this song, and as we listen, just think about those questions. What were you born to do? What is God saying to you? And what do you want more than God? Because what I realised yesterday was when I really took the time to sit in his presence, he told me some things that I needed to know. And had I not taken that time, I might not have heard them.